Welcome. This is we're running through a presentation that we actually kind of did a tiny bit before. We realized we didn't have a recording, and there have been, I think, a couple of requests for that. My name is Maddie. I'm a software developer. I've been working on and off very slowly, slower than I'd like, for a couple of years on a project called Means of Production. Means of Production is tied in generally with a philosophy called library socialism, which is not one that I created. My introduction to it was from a podcast called Seriously Wrong, which people might be familiar with. They are absolutely a great resource to do that. We will be touching on what library socialism is, and what the what the project is, and also especially this is coming out of the crypto leftist community. This presentation in particular, so a lot of it will also be tied in with how this ties into blockchain and some other tech that is very dear to the hearts of that like umbrella organization. So with all that said, yeah, we could talk about kind of a lot of my focus will be on this particular project, obviously, because developing it, but it's almost impossible to talk about one thing without talking about what library socialism is, why that's good, what libraries of things are, and like how that pushes a, for lack of a better word, anti-capitalist or post-capitalist society without exploitation, all that fun stuff. So yeah. So yeah, with that said, means of production, I'm just basically is the idea is it is a platform and application that just allows people to create and use libraries, both regular libraries, like what we call a simple library, which is one we're all familiar with. Hey, there's a building and it has some stuff there, and you can go borrow the stuff. And when you're done with the stuff, you bring the stuff back. And also even distributed libraries, which are, more of like a virtual trading circle, like, hey, we don't have a building, but I do have a lawnmower. If you want to come borrow it, you can do that. And we can arrange that even as a library in a virtual sense. Um, yeah. So with that said, that's kind of the idea. And then the larger part of why I keep using the word platform is not because I'm an annoying software developer. It's because the larger idea of the project too, is it allows us to federate, meaning join together a lot of different things of libraries. And the other thing is systems we might not even think of libraries, but because we're designing this very generically, the idea is that those can fit together and work within that. Specifically, the best examples I can use of that are things like buy nothing groups, if you're familiar with those, gift economy things, mutual aid, all sorts of things like this. We can kind of, the general idea of the application slash platform is that, hey, if we treat these as a library, a lot of cool things can happen, and we can kind of bring things together that have a problem. A lot of the problem with a lot of these awesome projects is just limitations of scope, i.e., they work really well or they're really good things, but you can't live your life in them. You know what I mean? Like you can't. I have to keep going back to Amazon. I keep going back to wherever, to the capitalist world for most of my things. So, and the philosophy behind the project, as opposed to like the library socialism philosophy, is it's an incrementalist one, obviously, but it's like, hey, if we can expand how many goods, services, and needs we can fulfill through libraries, that gets people out of the capitalist trap. And that's what we want to do. So with all those wonderful big things I've said already, I kind of touched on this already. What is means of production? A platform for making and linking together libraries of things. One of the first questions, usually, what kind of things? Almost anything. Um, like there's a couple legal restrictions, and one example I always like on the Seriously Wrong podcast is like people will be like, well, you're going to have a library of food. And yeah, why not? Just you might not want to accept returns unless you have a compost bin, things like that. But like, it's one of those things like when you kind of answer it like, yeah, there's no reason like we couldn't go to a library for food, actually. We talked in the last presentation about this, the delusions of grandeur, or the kind of end goal of like a library socialist society as a whole would even include things like housing. If you need an apartment, you could go to the library and say, I'd like to rent an apartment for a year. Now, how to deal with scarcity and stuff is stuff we'll talk about. And that's um, obviously part of the problems we'd be working out. But one of the cool things is that libraries have been around for literally centuries, and they have actually dealt with some of these problems. And there's different ways to deal with them. Um, so that's one thing. And it's one thing that people who are doing libraries on the ground are actually dealing with day to day. There's always something that's short, there's something that's long. And one other benefit we would hope that the application could provide is the more libraries it's servicing, actually, the more it could allow, you might have too many of one thing in one library and not enough in another. Okay, great. You can allow cross library loan type stuff to deal with that. The other cool thing is it can at least tell you what you're short on. It sounds silly, but information technology is there, and being able to say that, hey, I'm just looking at the picture here. We are always out of concrete trowels. You know what I mean? You might not realize it, or the waiting line is there, and you can compare that to the cost to get more. So, it might be, hey, you could spend $3 on concrete towels, make everyone happy, as opposed to buying something more expensive. And so having that data centrally available is also one of the big pluses that we hope the project would provide. Why is this important? I think I've droned on long enough about it. Library socialism is cool. And no, it's not just that it's cool. It provides an alternative to an exploitative system of capitalism, which is not working, is destroying the world, is destroying people. I'll get off my soapbox in a second, but obviously not a fan. I think if you're here, you probably are aligned with that goal. If you're not, let's grab a beer after and I'll harangue you for an hour about it afterwards. But one of the other big things about library socialism that I really like, though, is it can actually make almost everyone else richer. And the reason is it can be a lot more efficient for the way it uses finite resources. A lot of what we do in capitalism and even our market economies is really, for lack of a better word, just silly or redundant. It's done, the measure of capitalist success is whether it makes a profit, not whether it fulfills a need. Changing to a system that is more focused on the second can actually do a lot more. So, how much can a library do? That's sort of the big question, and that's one reason for the project is to push the boundaries of that. Libraries do a lot already today, and it's funny because everyone, I think, has a picture of a library that's still stuck in even 2 centuries ago. That it's a place for books. Um, every public library I know now, it's become an information center. It's a way to access uh, internet for people that do not have money to provide their own private means. It's also for things and for many more things than just books. So that's kind of what we're focused on. I've got to kind of talk about some of the terminology we use in the means of production project. You guys might have different terms for this in libraries or whatever. If you do, please. So we're going to talk about some of the problems and then some of the terminology. The problem, many valuable items go unused while others need to be bought or rented. The solution, that we allow people to share things. So good example, lawnmowers, tents, things like this. If you've ever owned an individual house as opposed to an apartment, you realize there is so much damn stuff you have to buy. And it's silly because what it does, it's funny. You need a bigger house because 90% of the time, the things you need to care for your house are sitting in the house. And it's kind of sick in a way. But if you're using the good or the thing 1% of the time, in theory, 99 other people could be using that if you arrange things. Obviously, you're never going to get to that extreme efficiency, but this is kind of what I was talking about before. That makes everyone richer, because to me, what's rich is not that I own my own lawnmower. It's, hey, when I want to mow my lawn, I can, and I have a tool that lets me do that. There's no reason why my tool and your tool cannot be the same tool. And so through just putting into lending networks, we've suddenly both become, either you could look at it 2 ways. Our cost to have that tool has halved, or we become twice as rich. And so that's back to the philosophy, kind of how we do this. Lenders can add their items. Borrowers can discover and use those items when they need them. Again, this is one reason for doing this as app/IT stuff, is searchability, findability, bringing kind of the benefits that information technology can do to a lot of these projects, which are, they either have to invent it themselves or they don't, or they kind of, it's like, there's a whole bunch of things that are basically someone's got a spreadsheet or a notebook somewhere, and that's great. It's just like that can make it hard to find things, or even to find out that there's a library around you. So that's part of the benefit we would want to bring as well. Some more key concepts, and this is kind of where we get into some of the terminology that we try and reflect within the platform itself. Person, these are individual users, borrowers, administrators. Um, we do try and differentiate between people and organizations and things like that. Why do we do that? Well, part of it is part of that is obviously, like, we don't believe corporations are people, and ultimately our goal is to help humans and other life. Thing. This will drive. I had one developer that was working with me. This drove them crazy because a thing is such a generic term. This is not an accident. This is done on purpose, and the reason is because a thing is pretty much anything. It can be a real thing, i.e., it has mass and volume and like all those fun things from high school physics. It can be a virtual item. There are virtual items that can be reproduced infinitely. There are virtual items that, due to legalities and which we will get into, and actually things that were purposely made to make them difficult, like DRM, that do have to be accounted for and limited, at least while we're in a capitalist system or trying to avoid piracy laws and things like that. So being able to account for but the important concept is that anything like that can be a thing. A thing can represent anything like that. Alone is basically how people and things interact in a library. When I borrow a thing, I create a loan. A loan has a status. A loan has, somewhere it originates from. A loan has a place it's supposed to go, right? So if I'm couple of fine details. One, not all loans require return. We talked about food. We talked about stuff like that. And this is, to me, an important concept for this platform, is that a gift, mutual aid, or, we try to stay away from charity, but even the idea of mutual aid can just be seen as a loan that does not have a return. There's a slight, maybe ethical or semantic difference between the two, though, and that's a loan that doesn't have to be returned is still expected to remain within the community. And the thought of it is this, if I give a gift to someone and they go ahead and they sell it and they keep the profit or whatever for themselves, that's one thing. If it's a loan, we kind of, it could in practice be the same, but I think what we're talking about is like trying to push kind of an idea. And again, that's one reason why library socialism was very appealing to me. These are not, I have young children. They know what a library is. You know what I mean? Like, this is not a concept you have to sell to people in a hard way at all. Simple libraries, these are terms. Traditional library, there's a building, there's stuff we do. There can be people aiding there to make sure that stuff comes in and out to inventory, to make it easily available and findable. Distributed library is a more radical idea. It is basically, it's a collection of users within a geographic area. They're just able to say, look, we don't have a central point. Those cost money. You have to have real estate or some form of building. We're not able to manage that, but we actually do want to be able to start lending things to people. And so they can just go create something virtually to say, hey, I've got that USB cable you need. Just come to my house between this time and pick it up. That second part we will get into, having talked with actually some of the people behind the Buy Nothing movement and some other apps. That actually is and having done a lot of stuff with that myself, that is actually one of the hardest things, even though it sounds like the limited. So I think distributed is a good stepping stone. But just my personal opinion, we support both forms. I do think you're going to see a lot of those then, as they get larger, want to move into a more simple form. And it's just because that arranging pickups does not scale well. Last kind of big concept of the platform, and then I do want to take a break and kind of talk with anyone else before I kind of dive back into the rest of this. Federation. So federation is a big part of what means of production aims to do and why it would be a good thing. Federation is basically, if you're not familiar with the term, it's that, hey, there can be a lot of little different organizations, and just because they talk to each other in a shared language, they're able to do a lot of things together automatically. What does this mean? It means that basically, as the platform's fully running, I might be a member of a library with 10 people, and that's great, and I really love it there, and I'm happy, but we don't have that many things, and I want to use things. But my library can join with other libraries, And now all of a sudden there's more goods, services, and everything available, and also more people to borrow them. So, and the way that happened, it gives you kind of the advantage of both worlds. I can have small, locally democratically controlled organizations that also can use economies of scale to do things. And how that works, of course, is like not the simplest thing, either from a technical or administrative thing, but it basically says that, like, hey, we as Library A have decided that, you know what, people from Library B, as long as they've proven they're a real person, they're great with me. They can come on and borrow anything. Or it could be more fine grained. It could be, look, we're happy. Library C, they're great people and all, but we don't really trust them over about 10 euros. You know what I mean? So they can borrow some of our stuff, but not all of our stuff and things like that. But I think you guys can kind of see how that, if you take that and scale that out to a large number of groups, all of a sudden you have a real possibility to do, A, I can search for a lot of things. B, I can provide, again, that data to libraries as a whole, to that ecosystem as a whole. And a big part is people don't have to go reinvent the wheel every time. You know, if I'm creating a library, cool, I don't have to make something and figure out interlibrary loans and stuff like that. I can basically just plug in and focus on what I want to do, which is giving stuff to people. Like that's what we want to be doing. So that's why the idea of developing platform underneath. And again, the big idea to me of library socialism and why to do it incrementally, the more things we borrow, the less we have to buy. The less things we have to buy, the less we're exploited. That, you know, you can tell where my economics comes from. But that, you know, if you have to pay rent and you have to work for someone else's profit, you do that because the more you have to buy, the more you have to do that. You know, a term for that often is wage slavery. People will go back and forth on that, but like we're trying to find an alternative to that idea. I'm going to dive into kind of some of the blockchain stuff in a second. Are there any questions? And did you want to jump in? Any comments? Please go for it.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for sharing all that, Matt. My name is Hino Rajani. So I'm the president of an organization called the Institute for Community Sustainability, which is based in London, Ontario. I'm from London, England, but I live in London, Ontario, so halfway between Toronto and Detroit. And we started a library of things in our city about just over 4 years ago. And so it's really cool listening to the way you're talking about it, Matt, and some of the terms you're using, things that we're familiar with, and other ideas quite novel. So yeah, I think you know, for us, what you know, our kind of how we came to starting a library of things was really from a perspective of waste reduction and also providing items to community members who just couldn't afford them. Those were kind of two main drivers of just, you know, reducing, like, a drill that gets used once a year, you know, that kind of thing, or something, a tool that stays in your basement. But then also thinking about students and older people and newcomers, you know, especially and you know, people on lower wages really struggle to do things that someone on a like average income even might consider quite normal. Or you might be normal, you need a certain thing in the kitchen and you just go and buy it, or you order it on Amazon. But for, you know, a lot of people, that's just not doable, and it's not really fair. And so that was kind of one of the drivers. And then also just the idea of reducing consumption as well is so important for planetary survival and to free ourselves all from wage slavery. And so we've been using the kind of items we have in our library, and are kind of fall into a couple categories. So it's all kind of tools, power tools and hand tools. And then we have kitchen type things. So like bread maker, ice cream maker, KitchenAid mixer, those kinds of things. We have some gardening tools for people. We assume people, you know, a lot of people who have gardens will have their own tools, but if you have an allotment, you might not have access to those. So we have some high quality, you know, gardening equipment for people to use. And then the other thing is around event supplies. So if you want to have a community event and bring people together, you don't want to, you know, if you don't want to use paper plates, you can borrow 100 plates, you can borrow, and silverware and cups and a pop-up tent and coffee urns and, you know, things like that. So we're always trying, you know, looking to expand what we can, but it's been a really fun experience. And certainly a lot of things I would have done differently. I think we probably just went, probably could have got more community input into some of the items that we got. Some items are used a lot more than others. And also I love the idea of the distributed thing is really interesting for me, just in terms of like expanding the capacity of what we can do. And I know what you mean about it. It doesn't necessarily scale the meetups part. Maybe there is a solution to that somewhere, but just like the idea of, because the other beautiful thing, and I'm very very active in my local Buy Nothing group as well, and my wife is too, and it's just a great way of meeting people.
Yeah.
I've made relationships with people on my block who I didn't even know, just because they had like an old like fairy bedspread or something that my that my daughters love. And I was, oh, they got kids around the same age and stuff like that. So that's the cool thing about that, bringing people together. So um, and I just wanted to comment as well. The idea of the federated structure makes so much sense, because we know that we don't have, I don't think, as a great density of thing libraries in Ontario, but we have about 10. There's one in
Wow.
Guelph and a couple in Toronto and Kitchener. And so Ottawa, of course, has got a big one. And then, so it would be really cool to be able to access some of those things, not necessarily on a day-to-day basis, but if there's certain larger items that we don't have, and that they have in Guelph, and there was a way of getting them to us. And so one of the things we've talked about in terms of like how to expand our reach is partnering with the current public library system, which we've tried, and it's difficult just because they have a lot of bureaucracy, and it's many layers of bureaucracy, and it's many different people that could be affected by something like a thing library. And so it's a lot it's challenging to do. We're still kind of gnawing away at it. We do have a good partnership with the library over our repair cafe events that we run. But the idea was that we could have, because there's a central library branch, and then there's about 14 different libraries around the city, that we could help get the items to people, because it is a factor as well. Like, not everybody has a car. One thing, if you have a car and you can come downtown, we're essentially located downtown. But if you're relying on bus transportation or you're walking, it becomes a lot harder to travel like that. And so it would be great to be able to have these different pickup locations around the town, and then and then that lends itself to kind of being distributed even further afield in that federate, connecting with other cities as well. Having a daily or weekly service where we're taking items from one location to the other, so that they could be picked up and stuff like that. Would love to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm not a fan of theirs, so I'm gonna give a disclaimer with that. The last presentation, I kept using Amazon as an example a lot, and it's because I'm not a fan of theirs. It's literally, but it's like, why I don't think anyone likes Amazon. They're pretty openly evil. And so the question is, well, why are they so big and successful? And it's sort of like, yeah, they are providing this, and kind of exactly like you said. Not everyone has a car. How can I get the thing? How can I get the thing when I need it, and stuff like that? So I think it is on us to, as we provide an alternative, to say like, okay, maybe we don't want everything they have, but if we can provide things that to the end user that are that valuable, it's great, because the part of Amazon, them not liking Amazon, is they'll leave in 10 seconds if you give them something equal. It's just like, which could be a very hard thing to do. Um, but yeah, no, thank you. That is so awesome to hear that you guys are doing that. Can you, one reason I was so excited to talk to you today is, what are some of the biggest challenges you guys have had or they're ongoing with, that? I know the public library system, because one question I've had about this project is like, well, why are public libraries doing this? And that had they don't necessarily have the philosophy. B, like, yeah, they are constrained very much by the governments that hold them. We long term, from a technological standpoint, we are set up to basically, allow their different systems to plug in at some point. But that would be, I'm imagining that would be like a 3.0 thing, because they're that slow, and getting them to sign on would be like literally a project sometime of years, maybe, would be my estimation from what, but I talked to people.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge for us, I mean, we're lucky that we have a space, that we're able to house everything. I suppose part is still awareness of, and then fundraising. Like, it would be, I'd love to kind of be able to grow our inventory and have maybe a better model for that. We run on a membership. We do have a membership fee, which is $60 a year, which is not a lot. And we do have a reduced rate that's off of that, and we often give free memberships as well. But I sometimes wonder if we had a completely free model, because it's not that big. Actually, it's not, about 20, let's say 25% of our revenue comes from memberships, and we do get grants. We're lucky to in that way that we do get some funding from the city to do what we do. But I think, yeah, if there was maybe just that perception about, access, it's not really, just more access through and volunteers, obviously coordinating volunteers more than there's always people willing to help. But in anything like this, it's like there's people, so we have skilled fixers, from our repair cafes who want to come and maintain, check the tools, maintain them, things like that. We have people want to help tidy, organize the space, but it's just that coordination aspect. So I kind of feel like we need it almost at a certain scale to be able to do it well. Like it's hard. That's just in our context at least. I'm sure there are ways that people have done things that are volunteer only, but I feel like if we had the capacity to have someone working full time or even half time on it, it would open a lot more possibilities.
One question I wanted to ask, because I do get this kind of often, is do you guys well, one, do you have like a late fee structure? I know some libraries do, some libraries don't. And the other is, do you have to deal with I don't like the bad actor problem, I mean, like, hey, people that come in and just take stuff and leave, and and then stuff like that. So
Yeah, good questions. In terms of bad actor, it's never been in it. It's not been an issue. It's one item. The one item that didn't get returned, and then it came back like 8 months later, and
wow.
and that person had moved house or something. Yeah, I think that's what happened. And I don't think there's anything else that's like that's not been returned actually. And that's one of the things when we were setting the library up, I spoke to a lot of different thing libraries around Canada and the US, and asked them about this. How do you deal with this situation? They're like,
Right.
this just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. Like, which is really cool actually. I mean, you would think,
That is great to. Sorry, I have a misspent youth of like a too much econ in college, and it's like the, oh, human nature, and you hear that
yeah,
all the time, and then it's like but it's funny because you go look for data on human nature, like, okay, how much stuff do people steal from libraries, and it's like it's doesn't seem to support that narrative. So that's great to hear from you as
yeah.
well.
And then in terms of the late fees, we do have a late fee structure. It's $1 a day. But in terms of a dollar a day that we're open, so we're currently open 2 days a week. But it's in practice, we're very flexible with it, and so we often will waive it, or just have people like say, do you want to pay, $5 or the $20 thing, or just waive it altogether. But also sometimes people just want to pay. There was someone recently who had bought a number of items, bought them back, a couple of weeks late, and it was like $63 of late fees. And we're like, okay, no, we could do something about that. And he's like, no, 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 no. I want to give it. The items were late, and I want to give this contribution to the library.
Yeah, that's one thing. The recent rewrite I did, part of it is the structure technically of this platform is very loose, and part of the reason is uh, the idea of like plug-in algorithms. And what do I mean by that? I mean, like, one of the things that varies, I know that libraries I think will want to vary, is at least, is their fee structure? Do you want a fee structure? Is it a set one? Is it a thing like that? Um, and then it's like, yeah, how do you, and I guess that's not really a bad actor problem, but it's like, yeah, how do if someone holds something for 3 weeks, that can be problematic, because it's like, hey, if I've got a tool, if I'm waiting up to do, if I need a tool to do a job, and I've scheduled other things around it, and being able to like signal how much of a problem that is.
Mm.
I don't know, that's something. But the good news is, like, yeah, again, if we can unify some of this stuff, kind of the idea is that, hey, we can have lots of choices, and you only have to solve it once, and then everyone can have that choice. Like, instead of having to figure it out at every library, we can you figure out basically a piece of plug-in code that just says, okay, this is how this thing works, and you can choose which ones you like locally.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool. Well, I will move forward. So, like I said, yeah, this is coming out of, this particular presentation is coming out of the blockchain socialist groups, the crypto leftist groups. Um, I know to a lot of people on the left, like, you immediately hear crypto and go, oh my God, da 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 da. So I want to assuage everyone. That's not the thing we're talking. This is actually how you use crypto for socialism, communism, anarchism, whatever your particular favor of non-capitalism is. So it is multi-tendency. We'll give it that at least. It's But yeah, so we're going to talk a little bit about the blockchain and how we tie in. So means of production, which is the name of the platform project, is it can work on its own. It's the 1.0 version is going to be very loosely tied with the blockchain, but there's a couple places that we're actually intending to use that technology and how it can be helpful. The first one, the DAO, the governing body of it, is set up on Gardens. On Gnosis, if you're not familiar with this, this is a really nice thing that was built for the same reason. It just offers community voting, democracy built in. I really like that I don't have to go spend months writing voting software when I could be writing library software instead. So that's one big benefit we're getting already from there. Receipts and dispute records. This is something that I think makes a lot of sense for the blockchain, is like a public record of, hey, especially when it comes to distributed stuff, I returned that book to you. No, you didn't. Yes, I did. Here's the record. You know what I mean? And like that receipt. It might not need to be fully public, but there is, especially as we go into federations of libraries and federate. So I don't, I'm library A, I know library B. I even want to say, look, anyone library B says it's good is okay. And then it goes on to library C and D, and then borrower, you know, 2 is moving through that chain. I might want to be able to say, look, I'm happy to take anyone, but if they have like, 5, if every time they borrow something, there's a dispute on the way they bring it back, like after 3 times, I'm not willing to allow them unseen into my library. So that's and anytime it comes to things of trust, like that's where a blockchain can be very useful, because we don't want to be a central authority. Again, these are federated. This is open source software, so anyone can basically go off and do a different version. We want to encourage that, but you do need to have a zero, what's called then a zero trust basically source of truth in order for things like these records. One fun, we were talking about kind of plugin algorithms. One fun one, which is not which will show up later, is an idea of quadratic weighting. And this is basically a term for, it allows people to basically bid to be next. We would try and make it so it's not bidding in money, but rather things like labor vouchers or other alternative, I don't even want to use a currency, alternative tokens that people can find for outside of the capitalist world. This is a related project that I've worked a little bit on. It's basically just like time banks are a good example of this, right? So it sounds funny. If I've spent 3 hours working at the library, I might say that, hey, it's an example used seriously wrong all the time. I like it because it's a great, ridiculous one, is the library has a yacht. And the yacht is a great example because we have one and everyone always wants it. You know what I mean? So it's like, and we're not going to buy another one. So this is a great, to me, example of like the most extreme constraints on a resource ever. So quadratic weighting is just basically a way of saying that, hey, if there's the yacht and I spend all my time working at the library, I should be able to go first in line at least once, not necessarily all the times. And that's sort of what this is. If I continue and try and renew the item, it gets more and more expensive. So what it seeks to do is kind of find a way to reward effort and things done towards the ecosystem and incentivize that in an econ term, with also not allowing A, exploitation, or B, those that have a lot to, we don't want to allow them to just take everything. Sorry, was there a chat question? Oh, no, sorry. Okay, cool. Yeah, labor tokens, time banks, stuff like that. Like I said, that's a sister project that is actually on the blockchain as well, and should be launching very simply with even another thing from the crypto left, this thing called Citizen Wallet. What that means is there's already an app. If you're interested in using those for a time bank you're setting up, please talk to me and we can get you set up with that as well. I'm just, this is a question get quite a lot. So on the distributed lending detail, this is basically like a step-by-step how this works. Shelly has a vacuum cleaner. Shelly says, hey, I use the vacuum cleaner once a month. I'm very, I'm not the cleanest person. So I'm going to make sure that other people can use this vacuum cleaner because I support this for all the reasons we've already talked about. So I go on my app, I basically list it as available. Bob, who happens to live in the same town, is within the same area and in the same library, goes and says, hey, I need a vacuum cleaner. I need to clean up this house. Okay, clicks, I would like to borrow this. Shelly gets notified, says, hey, so Bob wants to borrow your vacuum cleaner. Probably arrangement of pickup, things like that. What windows are available, things like that. Shelley finds something acceptable to both of them. They click. Bob shows up, gives the vacuum cleaner to Bob. Bob uses the vacuum cleaner. Within the time allotted, comes back and says, "Hey, thank you very much for the vacuum cleaner." Returns it to where it was specified he would return it. And that's part of the loan. Part of the loan is track on the distributed libraries has to be like, yeah, like not to be overly contractual, but like, yeah, please make sure that you don't a good example. I had a very small infant when I had a house and was doing a buy nothing group, and I had someone show up at midnight one time, and it was like, I had just got her to sleep, and it was like, I'm trying really hard not to be angry right now, but you were supposed to be here 4 hours ago. You just banged on every window, and it's like so. But so maybe I'll overcompensate for that, but that's part of why I there. And so basically, yeah. But to continue our little story, oh yeah, material, yeah. Let's absolutely talk. Shelly basically says, "Hey, great, you brought back my vacuum cleaner. Everything looks good." Clicks there. There's a receipt. Bob's returned it. She's returned it. It's back. She can either, and she can say, by default, it would say, "Hey, it's still available." If she wants to withdraw the item, she could go through a different thing, but it's back within the library. Even though what's funny is it never went to a library; it went to Shelley's house, to Bob's house, and back. But that's what how a virtual library works. This is very project specific. So if there's any general questions, library socialism, anything else you guys want to talk about, I can talk about kind of where the project's at, where we're moving next. The Alpha O1, basically the API. Originally, it was written in TypeScript. I'm actually a Python developer, so after long enough of banging my head and being like, "This is really stupid. I'm wasting all my time on this," I rewrote the backend in Python. That's done. The API is pretty much complete. I have a few little things, and at that point, I'm just gonna Dockerize that and host that. That's all set up to go. I'm going to then just develop a very ugly web client, actually, maybe a good use of AI for once. But basically, this will not be like finished, but this will be something that people can actually poke on and start to use and say, okay. And I might come and beg you to just take a look at some point and be like, because like really what it's looking for is like, hey, you know, guys, this doesn't have like the major thing that is needed by a library. And really trying to identify those things first off. And so that's why we're doing that. After that, it would be basically, yeah, having phone/mobile clients. I think that is how most people are going to want to use things like this, along with the web client, and just being able to fully support a simple and distributed library and borrow things and release that out to the public. That would be the big first release. The second one would be the federation between libraries, and part of federation is searching between libraries, making libraries able to join with each other. That's the big step of two. Future things, blockchain integration. We talked about some of the ways that can happen. Olio, buy nothing, existing library system adapters. So while we are going to, for 1.0 and 2.0, support simple and distributed libraries, kind of as like native, to get into the technical thing, this is all object-oriented and facaded out. So basically, we can write an adapter for almost any library system that exists. How long it will take might be a different question, but and the other thing is with Buy Nothing and Olio groups, I'm trying to get a hold of the Olio people because they have a fairly well-developed app here in Barcelona. For Buy Nothing, I talked to them a couple of years ago. They were trying to push their own app. I don't think they were successful on that. And then Buy Nothing will be a fun technical project because it mainly exists in Facebook groups. So it'll be a really fun thing to build. But I think that is a huge thing if we were able to bring Buy Nothing into the platform so that, hey, I'm using the library and I do a search, I can also I can say include Buy Nothing, include other basically tell me any way besides Amazon to get this USB cable I need. That's the real goal. Some of the more fun things like quadratic weighting, and some reporting and data engineering for basically to provide to library administrators like, hey, not just pretty charts, but also this is the things that's going on. Like I said, if you want to know what's the most cost effective thing you can buy to reduce wait times, we can do that math for you. We can do other things or show you, hey, like, do you realize your library lends 3 times as much as this as anyone else around you? That's cool or good, things like that. I'm located in Barcelona, Spain. I didn't add that in the introduction. this would be down the road. One thing I'd like to do here too is I'm going to try and set up at least a small storefront. I'm trying to find groups here. I'm an immigrant here, so I don't necessarily have the best connections of people that would have space that would be willing to host libraries of things for the same reason. If not, because that could reduce cost a lot. It's very funny because they actually have lockers in the mailboxes here, similar to the Amazon lockers. And I found out they're made in Spain, and it's like, wow, if we could automate that, that would be really cool too. If nothing else, for the buy nothing people, just to drop off something and pick up something. So, those are kind of the delusions of grandeur of the roadmap. Current fundings, pretty much I've been working on this on and off for 3 years, very, very slowly. In the meantime, sorry, parent and moved countries in that time. So that's why it's taking so damn long. Hoping to move much quicker in the near future. If anyone from tech has technical experience in these areas, this is where definitely can use help. Python, Fast API, blockchain, front end mobile for React. Was aiming for React, but not all technologies are good there. And eventually, for some of that stuff we talked about, helping with administrators, ML and search. By day, I'm a data engineer, so I can do some of that too. Just never enough time. Other uses, some of the pilot libraries we talked about. One fun one that I had talked to someone years ago is toys. Again, parent kids, but like you go through toys and it's the biggest waste and like you give them. And it's funny because when you look at it, I don't know, maybe I think about library socialism too much, maybe because like you start seeing like organically these things almost form, where it's like there are and parents will laugh about this. There are chains of hand-me-downs, like, like, hey, we always got Henna's hand-me-downs and ours always go to Zoe. It's how it works and it's stuff like that. And it's because, yeah, we want to get rid of this stuff. We don't want to throw it away, but we also don't want to have to devote a lot of effort to going to find someone. And actually, so to bring it back, what the we'll talk about at the end is kind of the conversations I did have with the Buy Nothing people and Olio, and some of the things I'm hoping that we could help even on that front with. Other uses of funding, we would be doing long-term library setup aid. Exactly that. Like, hey, a fund to help. I want to start a library. Da da da. How do I do it? Well, distribute libraries. Okay. Well, we need money for space, but we don't have the money. Funds to help with that, to be able to even write grants would be great. And the other one, damage insurance funds. I know, and actually, I would love to hear kind of how you guys have you. I know you haven't really had any. Said you haven't had too many problems, like, but some of the stuff you were talking about is really cool, like KitchenAid mixers and stuff like that. But it's also pricey things. So it's like, you guys own all the items, right? Like it's not that, hey, someone's lending it to the library, right?
Yeah, we own everything.
Gotcha.
Yeah, most of it was purchased new. About 2/3 of it was purchased new because we wanted high quality things. Other stuff was donated, and there's definitely like there is like a maintenance cost for sure. We have we put some money aside each month to cover that because things like things break and just by everyday use, and some often people will volunteer to chip in towards it if they feel bad that they broke it. Um, but other times, yeah, we have to cover that ourselves. But it's never been anything really big, and I think that's one of the things is we don't have anything that's like very high value. Like I don't think we have anything that's much over like $500. I think, and that which there was at one point I wanted to put something in there. We had a really nice projector. I'm not sure about putting $1,000 projector. That was just
Right.
a hunch. That wasn't sure about putting that in there, but maybe yeah. So,
No, and fully along with you. That would sort of be the idea of like an insurance fund, is like so that you could say like, hey, because I've had the same thing where I'm like, like, man, I should be lending that thing out, but also like I am going to need it, and if it breaks, like I can't afford it, and I can't easily afford a new one. So yeah, I think part of it would be that we would look into, again, delusions of grandeur maybe, but big plans. Like it would be great if, and especially because there's a federation of mini libraries, it can distribute the risk, so it can say that like, hey, that can oh, beautiful. Rather Mercurial. So if anyone's not familiar, Rather Mercurial added in chat, we're working on Bread Mutual saving circles low key. That bread chain is a crypto project that's very, very cool. It's the main focus of the crypto leftists. Basically, what it does is let people exchange money for Disneyland money. No, real money, real money for bread chain money. But the interest that's gained off that money actually goes to um, to left wing causes. And so it's a good way, like, for example, with the labor token side project, we have to store some funds to basically back up labor tokens. We store those in bread. And it's because not only is it good to help that project, but as our funds are sitting there, which they have to sit there and they're always instantly convertible to dollars, but the benefits of that interest goes to the bread chain project, which kind of provides a nice separation of concerns. You've seen this with a lot of nonprofits. They turn more into investment funds than things like that. So bread is kind of a way of segregating that out. I think that's really nice. Um, One other thing, yeah, for funding, and this kind of ties in with what I was talking about, like pilot libraries. I think what you guys are dealing with, having someone at a desk, it sounds silly, but like for a library, that could be so useful because it's like, A, they can answer questions. B, they can help people. They can, things like that. So that would be something that we would love to expand upon in the future. How to help? Well, people here are way ahead of me on this. Start a library, and you guys are way ahead of me on that. So I feel awkward even saying it, but yeah, working on getting the project together. In the meantime, I know spreadsheets people have been able to work is that. And also just, yeah, kind of sharing that idea of, hey, we could do a library. And I think that normalization is a big part as well. Tech work, all the stuff's up on GitHub. This is all as open source as could be, of course. I mean, there's a Mastodon instance devoted to library socialism that I set up a while ago. If anyone, Mastodon's basically just like open free Twitter. But I use that generally just for announcements and discussions and stuff. To me, I kind of like it better than Discord because it's open and there's a record of it so people can go. Because a lot of times I'm like, what did I talk about 7 months ago? I don't remember. So sounds odd, but that works. Social media, I'm awful at it now because I'm old and didn't used to be. And yeah, like I said, there's now a DAO open, which is, if you're not familiar with that, decentralized autonomous organization. Basically, it's a thing that uses crypto to let you vote and run a virtual democracy. So anyone that needs help with that, always please message me if you're interested in joining. Would love to have you. There's a slight, basically, membership thing, and if anyone needs it, we'll cover that. It's basically just done to cut down on spam and avoid people like trying to take things over without problem without having to provide anything. I think it's $10, not euros. Yeah. Cool. Well, that's my big presentation. Yeah, the kind of the addendum to that. So, like I said, I did talk. This is actually quite a while ago with the buy nothing people. So I'm not sure where they are. They were trying to like centralize into an app. Funny enough, and that's and then I'm not sure why, but one of the things I did ask them at the time, I'm like, hey, what's the biggest problem you guys see with buy nothing? I can tell you what my biggest problem is. It's the amount of time to set up stuff. And sorry, I'm bringing this up because it does tie in with the distributed library concepts and kind of the project, just for history, started out as like, hey, we should just make distributed libraries. That's a great idea. And then it's actually kind of tilted more towards the Federation and less towards the distributed library. And this problem is the reason why. It's because it's exactly that. There's good to it. Like you said, it's nice and you meet people. And I really do think it's a great thing of community. But the virtual type things, they have one problem, and it's that, yeah, you gotta invent it every time. And what I mean by that is, um, when we try and give away something, first thing that happens is you get 17 messages being like, hey, is this still available? Is this still available? You say yes. Half of those people go away and you're like, okay. Then you decide to give it to someone. Then you try and arrange something. Do they show up? Not all the time. Do they show up when they say they will? Not all the time. Or you're blocking out times. You've got to arrange a lot of stuff. And the problem is, it's just, yeah, that's not a it can add up. So I think, and that's why I say it doesn't scale, because it's like, yeah, if we want to get people, we want to, part of what we want to do with this platform and with, I think, libraries as a whole is just, we want to make it as seamless as possible. I don't know. I hate that word seamless because it's used by so much tech stuff to be like, it's like almost as bad as disrupt. But I think it is a good one to say that, like, that is why people go to apps. That is why people go to, again, Amazon or whatever. I'm old enough to where I remember Craigslist. I'm not going to romanticize Craigslist because Craigslist had good and bad stuff. Um, Craigslist, ultimately, part of the reason why Craigslist did go away is it wasn't seamless. You know what I mean? Like, I'm a failed musician, so when I was selling music equipment, it was fun because, yeah, I had to arrange the stuff all the time, and it was the same problems. I remember once I had a show, and it was like, it was easier. I had just gotten paid, so like I had enough money to just buy the thing new, even though it was going to be 3 times as much, but it was totally worth it because I knew it would be there the next day. So that's the largest problem with the distributed libraries. How we solve that, I don't know. There's a couple things we can do to maybe help with it. I don't necessarily love reputation systems and things like that, but that is, again, kind of like we talked about with receipts. I don't want to come out. And I think I think we worry too much about the bad actor problem in libraries from everything I hear from people who are on the ground. That said, we do, you do want to, if people flake all the time, at eventual point you might want to say, like, well, maybe I want to make sure that I'm going to give things to people that need them and that I know are going to pick them up, because I don't want, this per this person says all the time they'll pick things up and then they never do, and they waste everyone else's time, which is unfair to the, at a certain point. I do think you have to say that's unfair to the community as a whole. So but yeah, with that addendum, that is all I have. I don't know if we want to keep recording. Was there anything anyone wanted to discuss? Any questions? Rather myself or Hana? Okay, well, guys, I cannot thank you guys enough. I'm so sorry. Am I pronouncing that correctly? By the way, I'm
Yeah, Henal. Yeah.
Hino. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so
No
sorry.
worries.
It's
No worries.
uh, yeah. So, but yeah, no, I cannot thank everyone enough for especially doing this a second time so we could get a recording of this. And thank you again, Marv, for setting up the recording. Um, yeah, I'm on Discord. I'm on Mastodon. Anything, look up Library Socialism. Anything I can help with, please let me know. Otherwise, I hope to have good news within like a month or two that we can at least get that alpha up and running, and then hopefully the 1.0 within the year. So
Amazing. Thank you, Matt.
thank you
Looking forward
guys.
to